When the United States entered World War II, it did not simply mobilize soldiers and weapons. It mobilized industry on a scale the world had never seen before. American factories, roads, railways, and ports became arteries feeding an enormous mechanical war machine. At the center of this effort were military vehicles, machines that carried troops, hauled supplies, crossed oceans, and fought alongside tanks on every front of the war. This is the complete story of every major U.S. vehicle used in World War II. From lightweight utility cars to massive armored machines that helped turn the tide of global conflict. Before 1941, the U.S. Army ranked far behind European powers in mechanization. But once war was declared, the American economy shifted rapidly. Civilian automobile manufacturers were transformed into wartime producers almost overnight. Assembly lines that once built family cars now produce military trucks, tanks, and armored vehicles. The American approach emphasized standardization, reliability, and mass production. Vehicles were designed not just to fight, but to be repaired quickly, replaced easily, and used by soldiers with minimal training. This philosophy would prove decisive. No vehicle is more closely associated with U.S. forces in World War II than the Jeep. Officially designated as the Willys MB and the nearly identical Ford GPW, the Jeep was born from a desperate need for a lightweight reconnaissance and utility vehicle. Small, agile, and remarkably rugged, the Jeep could travel where larger vehicles could not. It served as a scout car, command vehicle, ambulance, artillery tractor, and even as a weapons platform. Machine guns, radios, stretchers, and anti-tank weapons were frequently mounted on Jeeps. Over 600,000 Jeeps were produced during the war. They served not only with U.S. forces, but were also supplied to Allied armies across Europe, Asia, and the Soviet Union. The Dodge WC series filled the critical gap between light utility vehicles and heavy trucks. Produced in dozens of variants, these vehicles served as troop carriers, ambulances, weapons carriers, and mobile command posts. They were valued for their durability and ability to operate under harsh conditions. Dodge WCs were especially common in North Africa and Europe, where their reliability on poor roads was crucial. The GMC CCKW, commonly known as the Deuce and a Half, was arguably the most important U.S. vehicle of the entire war. Capable of carrying 2.5 tons of cargo, it transported troops, ammunition, fuel, food, spare parts, and everything else an army required to function. Without the CCKW, Allied offensives would have stalled due to lack of supply. More than 560,000 were built, and they served in every theater of the war. From the Red Ball Express in Europe to jungle supply routes in the Pacific, the Deuce and a Half kept armies moving. The Studebaker US-6 was another vital transport truck best known for its role in the Lend-Lease program. Thousands were shipped to the Soviet Union, where they were highly valued for their reliability and ruggedness. On the Eastern Front, these trucks became essential for moving artillery, rockets, and supplies across vast distances. The Chevrolet G506 series served in similar roles to the GMC trucks, but was often used by engineering and logistics units. It proved adaptable and dependable, particularly in harsh climates. The M3 Scout Car was a lightly armored, fast vehicle designed for reconnaissance and patrol duties. Armed with machine guns, it provided mobility and limited protection for scouting units. Although vulnerable to heavy weapons, it was effective in convoy protection and command roles. The M8 Greyhound was one of the most widely used armored cars of the war. Equipped with a 37mm gun and capable of high speeds, it was used extensively in reconnaissance roles. Its light armor limited its survivability, but its speed allowed it to avoid prolonged engagements. M2 and M3. Half-tracks were a uniquely American solution to mechanized warfare. With wheels at the front and tracks at the rear, they allowed infantry to keep pace with tanks over difficult terrain. The M2 and M3 half-tracks transported troops, towed artillery, and served as mobile weapons platforms. Variants were armed with machine guns, mortars, and anti-aircraft guns. They became a symbol of U.S. mechanized infantry units. The M3 Stuart was the primary U.S. light tank early in the war. Fast and mechanically reliable, it performed well in reconnaissance and infantry support roles. However, its light armor and relatively small gun made it ineffective against heavier enemy tanks. Despite this, it saw extensive service in North Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. The M3 Lee was an emergency design created while the more advanced M4 Sherman was still in development. Its unusual configuration featured a 75mm gun mounted in the hull and a smaller turret-mounted gun. Despite its awkward appearance, the M3 Lee provided critical firepower during the early stages of the North African campaign. The M4 Sherman became the most important American tank of World War II. Reliable, easy to manufacture, and adaptable, it was produced in enormous numbers. The Sherman served in countless variants, including flame tanks, recovery vehicles, and self-propelled artillery. While it was often outmatched by heavier German tanks, its availability, reliability, and effective combined arms tactics made it successful. M10 Wolverine. The M10 was the first widely used U.S. tank destroyer. Armed with a powerful 3-inch gun, it was designed to counter enemy armor. Its open-top turret provided good visibility but left the crew vulnerable. The M18 Hellcat was the fastest armored vehicle of the war. Built around speed rather than armor, it relied on rapid movement to strike enemy tanks and withdraw quickly. The M36 Jackson mounted a 90mm gun capable of defeating even the heaviest German tanks. It provided much-needed firepower late in the war. The M7 Priest mounted a 105mm howitzer on a tracked chassis, providing mobile artillery support. It allowed artillery to keep pace with advancing armored units. M12 and M40 Gun motor carriages. These vehicles mounted heavy artillery pieces on tracked platforms. They were used to destroy bunkers, fortifications, and hardened positions. Bulldozers and engineering trucks. Engineering vehicles were essential to the Allied advance. Bulldozers cleared obstacles, repaired roads, and built airfields under combat conditions. Bridge-laying vehicles allowed armored units to cross rivers quickly. The DUKW, often called the Duck, was an amphibious truck used extensively during amphibious operations. It transported supplies directly from ships to shore, playing a critical role during landings such as D-Day. Harley-Davidson WLA motorcycles were used for courier duties, reconnaissance, and military policing. The Harley-Davidson WLA became the standard U.S. military motorcycle and served in every theater. Aircraft support vehicles. Fuel tankers, bomb loaders, airfield tugs, and maintenance trucks supported the massive Allied air war. Though rarely seen in combat footage, these vehicles were vital to sustaining air operations. Why U.S. vehicles won the war. American vehicles were not always superior in armor or firepower, but they excelled in reliability, ease of maintenance, and mass production. The ability to keep vehicles running, supplied, and replaced allowed Allied forces to operate at a scale unmatched by Axis powers. From the Jeep to the Sherman tank, from amphibious trucks to massive transport vehicles. American machines carried the Allied war effort across continents and oceans. These vehicles were the unsung heroes of World War II, forming the mechanical backbone of victory. Which U.S. vehicle do you think played the most important role in World War II? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more complete military catalogs.